Hey folks, welcome to a Broken Meeple Anthology review. I can't recall if I said I was going to do anthologies in the old format with the direct camera or this particular camera, but I kind of need to get stuff done today and the camera was already set up because I've just done a top 10, so I figured, you know what, I'll just kind of mix and match with the anthology reviews, but it's just a bit more convenient for now. So what these anthology reviews are, if you've never watched my channel before, basically this is where when I'm like swamped with games like I am around Essen, I tend to do smaller games or expansions by way of an anthology, which means doing a lot of them all at once, giving a little bit, one of them a little bit each time, and just to talk about whether they're good expansions or good little filler games, whereas I leave the normal reviews for the bigger, more like sort of more involved games, shall we say. So with this one, I've got 5 expansions to talk about this time. So 5 expansions to quality games. Some of them are very recent and, you know, I want to give my thoughts. So we're going to start off nice and simple with the new Ticket to Ride expansion. And that is Japan and Italy. This is the newest map pack for Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride is still what I believe should be the #1 game on Board Game Geek because frankly, when you think about a game that can appeal to everybody and has done so much for the industry and is still going strong since 2004, it's Ticket to Ride, man. Come on, you got to admit this. Gloomhaven at #1, whatever. But with this one, this adds 2 more maps, Japan and Italy, and it's a bit of a hit and miss expansion, I will say. You know, first up, let's start with the weak one, Italy. As much as I want to visit Italy, I really do. And Japan, to be honest, actually. But Italy feels like a very generic map. Basically, it's a large map. You've got double and triple routes. So as soon as you hit 4 players, it starts to get a bit less tight. I think 3 players is the best way to play the map. But with Italy, the only twist is 2 things. Firstly, ferry routes now have a second type of card where you draw the card as a separate action and the card counts for 2 of the segments on the ferry route. Whoopee. Not a big deal, really. You know, but then you've got the second part of it, which is the region scoring at the end, where you have essentially like different regions, and if you go to multiple regions, you get points, and it gets more and more the more regions you explore. So it's basically just a glorified longest route, really. So it's not bad. The map is still good to play. But when you think about an expansion map, you just think this just seems a little bit generic compared to other Ticket to Ride maps. I would have preferred something a little bit more, I don't know, just a bit more different or a bit more unique. But it's a fine map, just not particularly, shall we say, memorable. That's probably the right word. With Japan, however, that's the sweet spot of this expansion. It's a very different feeling map. Japan is a very small map, or feels smaller than other maps, but it's got 2 little subsections, a different island and a subway, and they connect to 1 city on the main board, so when you hit Tokyo, you then expand into this little mini-map. That's a cool little gimmick, but it's nothing much different from other Ticket to Rides. But here's the cool thing. You have the bullet train. I really want to ride on the bullet train though, it sounds cool. But I don't often say that about trains. But with this bullet train, these are neutral tracks on the board that anybody can build. And when you build on it, you don't put your trains on the track. In fact, you only start with about 20 trains, 20 to 25 trains. It's like a lot less than normal. But when you do a bullet train, you put the single bullet train miniature, and there's different miniatures in here for it. And then anybody can use that route for their tickets. So you got to hope that you're not helping other players too much. But on top of this, there's a separate track that you go up with, like, depending on how much you build on the bullet train, and whoever gets them, and there's basically like a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th place point total for who contributes the most. And in a 5-player game, it can be like plus 15, plus 10, 0, minus 10, minus 20, or something like that. You know, in a 2-player game, it's nasty because it's plus 10 or minus 10. Whoo! And if you don't contribute at all, it's minus 20. Ouch! You know. But you don't have to go for it. Maybe you might just say, you know what, I'm going to stock up on a ton of tickets, take the minus 20 and see what happens, you know, and other people might do otherwise. But it's a nice and interesting twist that makes the map stand out. What I said about Italy being too generic, this one ends up being a lot better. So all in all, the map pack is still fine. I'd give it probably, if I was to say overall, I'd give it maybe like a 7 overall. It's still good. It's not one that I think you have to rush out and get. But certainly if I was to do each map individually, I'd probably say Italy is about a 6. you know, maybe a 5. It's pretty average and there's nothing particularly memorable about it. But then the Ticket to Ride Japan map is a solid 8. I think the Japan map is definitely the reason you're buying this box and not the Italy one. But like I say, it's not an essential map pack. I can think of better ones that you could get, like UK and even Switzerland and in India gave you at least 2 pretty solid maps to play, whereas this one's only really giving you 1. But it's still cool, and I ain't gonna say no to more Ticket to Ride maps. So next up, we're going to talk about a small expansion that recently came off a Kickstarter, and that is the Pursuit of Happiness Experiences. This is a game I adore. If you know anything about my top 100, I think in my top 20 games, Pursuit of Happiness is in there, and oh, I just love it. It's sitting over there. I have literally just packed in this expansion with the other mini Kickstarter promos and that into the box. Sleeved, it just fits. I have a special way of doing it and I cannot deviate. I can't put more cards in there. It is filled to the brim while still sitting flush. But this is the newest one to come out. Previous one was Communities, where you could help out local neighborhood and get points for that. This one allows you to plan an experience, which typically means traveling most of the time, like going to this, like the World Cup final, or going to a special holiday destination. And what it essentially means is that you place a Meeple thing on the experiences, you pay a cost and get a reward if need be, and then later on, when it gets to the end, you choose whether to just do the initial experience or to extend it, pay more cost, get more reward. It's a pretty simple concept, and on its own, this expansion would not be the most lucrative thing in the world. So, it certainly wouldn't be like, oh, I must get this expansion for it. What comes in this expansion that I do like, though, apart from some additional cards for all the decks, is the idea of dreams. This is what makes this expansion. The dreams board is a separate board that you have yourself, which you have 3 slots, and when you take a card, instead of actually taking the card and using it now, you can instead place this extra meeple you get on the card itself, I think, or on the dream board. And you get a little bonus for doing it, but what it does is that it plans it for later. So say there's a project out there and it's like, oh, I really want to do Tai Chi, I want to get that health bonus, but I haven't got the resources now. Well, hang on a minute, let me go get it now, plan ahead, and I'll say that at some point I want to do Tai Chi. And every round you leave it, it gets worth more points. But if you don't do it by the end of the game and fail to live up to your dream, you lose points in the same fashion. Not only is that wonderfully thematic for what this sort of game is, it's a brilliant fix for a minor negative I have with the game, which is the fact that sometimes the right stuff comes out and you just haven't got the resources to do it at the time. Now, it doesn't matter. You can plan for it. And of course, you need to be able to do it. So it's not like you can just randomly go, oh, reserve a card. Yeah, easy. No, you still need to be able to do it. And of course, commitments to family and jobs and everything like that and old age might just lose you too much time that you're not able to do it. But thematically, it works great as well. As a teenager, you might I'm going to dream of being a dentist. I'm going to get married and have kids when I'm older. I'm going to go on this holiday when I'm there. Someday I'll own a massive house or a big car. And it works so well from a thematic perspective that I adore this expansion for it. The experiences, I could take or leave. It's another type of card. It goes nicely with the community cards. They're good, not fantastic, but I'll throw them in because they're a simple include and it's more options, more stuff to do, more stories to tell, which is the whole point of this game. But the dream board, yes, perfect. This is an expansion that we needed for a while with that dream board, and I love it, and I will throw it into every game because it's an easy teach, gets you a bonus when you're doing it, so again, it gets you some bonus resources. And it's a good way for new players not to get hosed by not having resources because they'll think, oh, I didn't plan well enough, I didn't get it. Oh well, I'll dream about doing it later. It just seems that wonderful thematic fix. So yeah, if you're a fan of the game, I highly recommend you grab this. Doesn't matter which order you get this or Communities, they're both separate from each other. Although I would say if you've got Pursuit of Happiness, get this one first, then Communities. Eventually you want both because more cards is always good. I love this game. Now we're going to go on something a little less fruitful, and that is the newest expansion to Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, Dead of Night. This is a fairly smallish expansion compared to what they tend to do with Arkham Horror. It's about the same size as a typical LCG box, and this basically just adds more of the good stuff. A few more investigators, more cards, which the game kind of needed. It started off on the typical Eldritch Horror. It starts off with bare bones amount of cards, and then you slowly boost them up. So more content is good. The main thing that this is adding, though, that's probably worth worth a damn for actually getting it, is the 2 new scenarios. I can't even pronounce the old one that one of them is facing. It's this big blob thing with a ton of teeth. But the other one is more geared towards the gangs that hang around in Arkham, so it's more of a mafia type scenario. There's 2 scenarios. One of them is fantastic. It is easily my favorite expansion, favorite scenario I've played to date. The other one is possibly my worst one I've played to date. This is very much an up and downhill expansion here. So first up, let's start with the good one. No, let's start with the bad one. It will make more sense. The one against the ancient one, the more sort of a Cthulhu-y type thing. Oh dear. There's 2 things very wrong with this one. Firstly, there's not a lot of branching paths in the storyline with that codex. You pretty much start off on the same bit, and then you might branch out into 2 bits, and then it all just comes back into one anyway. It's like, not a particularly interesting story, and, you know, it doesn't allow for a lot of replay value. But the worst thing with this, oh my god, it's like paywalls in mobile games and stuff. It just throws this belter of a colossal screw up for the last part of the scenario. And I'm gonna say, not going to give away story elements, but minor spoilers for mechanics. But this one basically requires you to, here's a central point that you need to get to, and you need to collect clue tokens, which take a lot of time anyway, go back to this place, and then based on a chance roll, you have to see whether you can put your clue tokens on the scenario sheet. And if you fail, and there's a good chance you'll fail, I mean, you only succeed on 5s and 6s here, you get a certain amount of dice based on how many clue tokens you throw in, I think, and then if you lose, they're gone. So you have to get more clue tokens, and then go back, and hopefully get it. Whilst everything else is going on, all the anomalies and all the creatures. That is stupid. Stupid.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
So stupid. I mean, it takes the game... It was progressing relatively quickly, I thought, when I was playing it. I thought, like, oh, we're doing alright, yeah, and this expansion won't take too long. Great, shorter scenarios. And then it throws this giant roadblock, and it's like, so hang on a minute. We will either fail this mission, or we will succeed, but we will either succeed in about an hour's time because we're lucky with the dice, or we'll succeed in 3 hours' time because we just can't get the die rolls. And we have to then go back and find more clues, and then we have to go back and do this test. It's a horrible resolution to a scenario. So much so, I will refuse to play this scenario ever again. Now let's talk about something better and talk about the gang one, the mafia one. This, in contrast, is a fantastic expansion. Firstly, it's more relatable. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to spoil the story. There's elements of Cthulhu stuff in there. But for the most part, it's about the 2 gangs. There's the O'Shannon and another one, I can't remember the names, but, 2 rival gangs. And there's so much more branching paths in it because depending on whether you side with one gang over the other, changes the board state, changes the branching story path, changes the resolution. It allows for not like infinite amounts of replayability, but it allows for a lot more than the other one did, and more so than some of the older ones did. It's more relatable because it's more like mafia style things. You're killing more human enemies than you are weird enemies. It just works. There was something about that scenario that just made me go, yeah, this is great. Loving this one. And so, the investigators are fine. They're cool, new abilities, and more cards is always good. But that's the side effect of the expansion. It's really about the scenarios, and I am going to say one of them is fantastic, the other one is horrible. So, be that as it may, if you want to get this expansion great, I think I can only give this a 7 overall as well because, as much as that other scenario is fantastic, you are then effectively paying £22 for a few extra cards, a few extra investigators, and 1 good scenario because you will more likely never play or never play again the other scenario. So value for money is a little bit questionable here. But if you love Arkham Horror 3rd Edition and you just want to expand the content, then by all means grab this. At least you will get 1 fantastic scenario out of the box and more content. But otherwise, yeah, this was kind of hit and miss. I mean, this big beastie on the front, I was expecting a lot more from it, and just didn't do it for me. Now for another simple expansion, and that is Imperial Settlers, the Japanese Islands. This is Portal, Ignacy Trzewiczek's game. This is Empires of the North. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Go check out my review for that back in the summer. But, love the game. It takes Imperial Settlers, which I still love, I still have in my collection, but then amps it up to 11. It's a fantastic game. So having more factions, oh yes, beautiful. Because Imperial Settlers had you deck build with these factions, which is the problem it has right now. This one though just gives you a unique faction, and that's it. You take the faction deck and you work with it. Brilliant. So this one just basically gives you 2 more factions based on the Japanese style theme. So you already had about 6 or 7 in the base set, now you've got 8 or 9, I've lost count. But these ones are very interesting factions, and they're seamless. I mean, you could throw these into any game regardless. The only weird thing I have with this is the difficulty rating of them. The difficulty rating, as done by Portal, is the... I'm trying to think what their names are. I'm trying to remember which ones are which. The Eumenico... Yes, the Eumenico clan is done as difficulty 8, and the Saikoro clan is done as difficulty 9. So they're both hard clans. They are not recommended for beginners at all. But the one that's rated lower has a rules mechanic about putting goods onto the cards and shipping them off to different other cards and getting bonuses that way, which is 2 pages in the rulebook devoted to this one mechanic. And it's not the easiest thing to get your head round at first. So you need to be pretty good at this game to understand it. And yet that's the difficulty 8 one? It certainly should be high, but I feel like this one should be like a difficulty 10, because you're juggling all this stuff around. But certainly it's still a fun clan to do. If you really want to have someone who's micromanaging a cool resource thing in front of them, then this is definitely a fun clan to do. My favourite though, hands down, is the one that I think actually should be rated a bit lower in difficulty, and that is the Saikoro clan, which I get their reasoning. Ignasti has spoken about this. His reasoning is because a new player won't necessarily know the best way to use this clan, without having experience with other clans and other cards. So I get that. Maybe I just adapt quickly, or maybe I just didn't find it too difficult. But what the Saikoro clan does, and it's really fun, you basically have a lot of cards that allow you to exchange stuff with opponents, or use their cards, or give them stuff in order for you to get a bonus. And the idea is that the reason it's high difficulty rating is because you need to know the best time to do that. One of them allows you to flip their action pawn back to its able spot. Well, clearly you want to do that when they haven't got the resources to utilize it, or they've already passed. And there's other ones where give them an apple and then you get to do this cool ability. Well, I better make certain that they've either got an abundance of apples already, or they have no useful apples when I give it to them. So there's stuff like that. And with cards, you can exhaust someone's card and use its ability, or you can unexhaust their card and use their ability. And it's like, right, well, before I flip your card back over, I better be certain you can't use it. It's very much about, we make exchanges, we make trades, but we come out on top. And the stereotype Japanese accents I've heard people do with this one, as they say, like, oh, you like deal? Yeah, deal good? I can't do a Japanese accent, I'm not even going to try, but... I've heard like hilarious stuff come from this, but I think that clan is so much fun where you just sort of go, we've made this lovely trade. Did you not like that trade? No? Oh well, never mind. It's like, give me back my fish. I don't want your stupid apple. It's great. Causes a lot of banter between players. But that's essentially what this is. 2 new factions for an already fantastic game. In terms of this, I think this is solid. I mean, this is definitely like a 9 out of 10 for me. I do think that the first clan I mentioned probably should be rated a bit higher in difficulty, and is definitely going to take even a seasoned Empires of the North player a little bit of time to get to grips with what exactly the thing is doing, because it does have 2 pages of rules, whereas in comparison, the Saikoro clan basically has 1 paragraph of rules. That's how different they are. But I love the Saikoro clan. I like the Eumenico clan. They're still good. They're not... as older clans, I prefer to them, and definitely the Saikoro clan is my favourite out of this box. But yeah, if you like Empires of the North, there is no reason you should not grab this. It is 2 really cool factions for an already fantastic game. And finally, we're going to talk about underwater cities, and this is New Discoveries. Just came out of Essen, and this adds a few things to the game, but doesn't complicate it to an extent. The main thing is that it adds a few extra cards, some extra cards to each deck. Great, more variety, different abilities, I like. The main thing though, oh yes, it is about time you did this. Absolutely about time you did this. Here we go. They give you a bunch of these boards that are recessed. Finally, recessed boards. I can put my finger in all the different things, and you'll beads, I mean, yeah, you've still got to stack the beads, which is a bit annoying and fiddly, but at least they'll stay in their wretched holes. And, you know, you've got different boards because the modules in this allow you to use different things. So there's multiple boards depending on which expansions and modules you're using. I think it comes with like 12 boards or something ridiculous. It's great. I love these boards. They should have been in the base set. This is pretty much the sole reason you should get this expansion, just for those. You know, can't really say much more about it. But there are other elements, of course. With this one, though, you're also getting more metropolises, so there's more different strategic paths you can go for based on those metropolises, because you're kind of limited by the ones in the base box. Now you have more variety, and that's kind of this expansion all over, really. It's more variety, more of the good stuff, which is how a good expansion should be done. You've even now got asymmetric personal assistants. Remember those generic dudes that you got rid of pretty quickly in the old game? Now you've got these unique ones that give you a special power that only you have. One of them is a shark. It's a shark with like a thing attachment to it. I mean, the amount of times that there's been the shark with freaking laser beams attached to their head joke, you know, it's gone insane with this particular character.
And that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
It's great to have asymmetric powers now. The main new addition that this one has, though, is a module called the Museum. And the Museum is okay. I'll throw it into most games. It's not an essential module by any means, but essentially it just allows you to, you know, gather things from the sea as you're doing your turn or covering up bits on your board, and you place it on this museum board and it'll get you a cool bonus if you're like the first person to do it. And it's essentially like a race to get bonuses. Nothing particularly complex. You could throw it into most games of underwater cities if you were teaching it, I think, although maybe, depending on who you're teaching it to, I would leave it out. You know, it's not a complex mechanic, but on top of everything else you gotta do, it's another thing to do. But otherwise, it's just basically metropolises, cards, assistants, and extra player boards, and one new mechanic. That's pretty much what this expansion does. But the extra cards, love them. The extra boards, fantastic. More metropolises, great. And a museum mechanic, fun, but not essential. There is one downside to this game, though. And it's a personal nitpick, I admit, because other people have said they haven't had this problem. But you notice I'm keeping this in the expansion box. Yeah, the other one's in the other room. I can't fit everything into a single box. Now, some people have. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to require some Tetris skills, because bearing in mind, I mean, put it this way. The boards and the rulebook, right? This is all that's in here now, just boards and rulebooks. That's a lot taken up by boards, okay? And, you know, yes, I've put the, I mean, this is the main board and the recess boards. I think I've put the standard boards in the other box. You know, I mean, you could just leave them out. But like I say, this is all just in this box. But this is just boards. Nothing else. Not even cards, not even rulebook or anything. Not even the player aids. You know, so that's a lot of space taken up with just that. You expect me to get all the components and cards in there? No. I mean, I keep my, you know, reference sheets are just as they are, but I keep my components in a Plano box. You know, it's a lot better way to do it, because otherwise the setup just takes forever. This is a thin box. I mean, it's not taking up that much space, and it contains everything, including upgraded components, because I pinned this game out. Where am I supposed to put the cards? I know some people have managed it with bags, but when I look at the way they've done it, you just know the setup time is going to take forever with the game. You know, when they've bagged up multiple bags for the cards and bagged up all the components in a separate bag, it's just going to be ripping out bags. It's just going to take forever, and it's just not what I want. So I have to keep this in two boxes, which is irritating when I don't have a lot of space. Would it have killed you guys to make a bigger box?
Now, evidently, my cycloptic colleague informs me that that can't be done.
Seriously, why did you stick with this level of box? You could have easily just upped the ante and got a bigger, like, Ticket to Ride style box that could have held everything and possibly even left room for more expansions. What are you going to do when you release another expansion for this game? You're going to release another box like this? How are we going to keep it in, like, 3 boxes then? You know, a bigger box would not have been too much to ask. I'm sure it wouldn't have been that much more costly to do it. I mean, the game's not cheap anyway. It's still a relatively expensive expansion, mainly because of all the recessed boards. So you're still paying a bit for it. You could have just made a bigger box. Wouldn't have taken that much. And you're not the only publisher that keeps falling foul of this. There's other publishers as well, Stronghold Games.
Can you remind me what I pay you people for? Honestly, throw me a bone here.
But you know, that's the one negative I have, the fact that the box is not big enough to ideally hold your components in a nice, neat and organized fashion. You either have to go disorganized, which I don't want to do, or keep it in 2 of these boxes, which is a pain. So that's the only negative I have of this expansion though. Otherwise, I think it's a solid expansion and one that's definitely worth getting. I would give it overall a solid 8 out of 10. It's definitely one to get if you're a fan of underwater cities. You know, those recess boards alone are worth the price of admission, but more cards, more metropolises, and more like asymmetric personal assistants, fantastic. The museum, I can take or leave it. It's fun, but it's not essential. But again, it's at least they're not overcomplicating the game with it. You know, I was worried that it was going to add too much complexity to a game that's already pretty complex, and thankfully they haven't done that. So that's Underwater Cities New Discoveries, solid expansion for fans of the game. And that's it, yep, that is 5 expansions taken care of, and I've just done a top 10, so voice is starting to go already, so I'm going to leave it there. Plenty more reviews to get on with though in the future, so you've got that to look forward to. That's it from me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. If you like the content, please subscribe and ding the darn, as they call it, you know, and subscribe to the channel and show your support. I really do appreciate it. I want to try and get the numbers up, and I feel like I've hit a plateau recently. It'd be nice to boost it a little bit further before Christmas. Little Christmas present, guys. How about that? But until then, I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. And remember, regardless of whether you're, you know, on the Japanese bullet train, exchanging resources with me unfairly, diving underwater, or killing Cthulhu beasties in the weirdest, longest, most drawn out way possible, it's still only a game. Take care, and I'll see you next time.